Tell me about your brother.
I idolized my brother. He was 16 years older than I was, and he joined the Army when he was 18 or 19, and I believe he was in for about 4 years, and he was stationed in Texas near San Antonio. I think it was Laughlin or something, Air Force Base.
Yeah.
And but he never had the opportunity to go overseas, even though he wanted to, because he had injured himself doing I don't know what, or got ill when his platoon was sent over. And then he met, I'm not sure how he met her, but he met my sister-in-law, and they married while he was in the service. And then she was from Michigan, and then they moved to Michigan, and eventually, at the end of his life, he was in Carlsbad, California.
What was his job in the Army?
I don't know.
You're not sure?
I don't know. I believe he was a first lieutenant, but I'm not sure what his capacity was.
What did he ever talk to you about his service? Did he say he really enjoyed it, even though he didn't get to go overseas?
I think it was a good experience because he signed up with 4 of his buddies.
Oh, okay. That works out.
Yes, I think that worked out, and they remained friends over the years. They went to high school together at St. George's High School in Chicago.
Oh, okay.
So.
And then your brother lived in Carlsbad after he got out of the service?
No, after he got out of the service, his wife was from Michigan. They moved to St. Joe, Michigan, which was the sister city of Benton Harbor, and that was the home of Whirlpool Corporation. So he started off working there and worked for Whirlpool until he retired.
Wow.
And he was sent in various places, Tennessee and Georgia, and then retired. He always wanted to come to California.
Did he have any children?
Yes, he had 2 daughters, Kathleen and Patty, and unfortunately, he and Marion divorced after 25 years of marriage.
Wow.
And the daughters became estranged from him for many years. But Kathy reconciled with him, and so did Patty to a certain extent. And with the 2 daughters, he had, I believe, 5 grandchildren. I met 2 of them because Patty lived in L.A. I understand she is divorced, but...
When's the last time you've seen his daughters?
I saw Patty at the time that he passed away in 92. Kathy I saw about a year before that because she came out and helped take care of him when he was so ill. He died of bladder cancer.
Okay, now fast forward a little bit. What was your first job?
My first job was when I was in high school, and I had a job as a receptionist for a Manna freezer. They had a small office in Santa Ana, North Main Street, and I was the only one in the office. I took phone calls, and I don't know what else I did, but I just took phone calls. I didn't work there very long.
Did you have a lot of other jobs before you started teaching?
I did. I worked at the snack shop at the corner of 17th and Flower in Santa Ana. That was when I was in college, and I would come home on the weekends and work there as a, I wasn't a waitress, but whatever they call them, who seats people. That's what I did.
Whatever those are called.
And then a fun job that I had was working at Buffum's department store on North Main in Santa Ana. And I worked in the men's shop with a wonderful man called Mr. Noonan. And his son was at Georgetown University, and he was very good to me.
That's good.
Yeah.
And then when you went back to teaching at Modern Day, what subjects did you teach again?
Well, when I was a senior at Cal State Long Beach, the principal, Father Michael Hanlon, called me and asked if I would teach part-time speech. And I was thrilled because I hadn't graduated yet. So I came and taught a couple of classes of speech, and then I was hired on full-time after I graduated. And he said, well, we don't have anyone to teach ancient history. I said, ancient history. I never liked history because I couldn't remember all the dates and the people.
Uh-huh.
But I said, oh, sure. So that was pre-computer. So I kept probably a chapter or two ahead of the students
There you
in history. But I loved teaching speech, and the students that I had were great.
go. How long did you teach it, modern day?
Well, during that time, at least in the private schools, if you were pregnant and once you started to show, you could not teach anymore. So being that I was married in June and got pregnant right away and had Sharon in September, or had Sharon in March, I could only teach through the first quarter. So I taught a part-time and then a full-time year, and then I only taught a year and a quarter.
Okay.
And then I left working to raise the children.
What do you remember about teaching the most? What were some of your best memories teaching students?
My best memories are interacting with the students. People ask me, well, do you miss teaching? And I say, well, not really, but I miss the students.
Yeah.
I miss their energy and their love of life and their comedy and just the life of. There's such energy, I think, and hope and dreams for the future among high school students, and that's what I miss, the spirit of the school.
Do you still keep in contact with any of your students?
Mostly the ones who were classmates of my son Kieran's. Yes, I still keep in touch with them, a couple of them through Facebook.
Yeah.
And I've seen them at various functions.
Now, going from teaching a class of how many students? About 30 students or so?
I forget originally how many students I had. Now, what I taught, primarily the speech, was an elective. But the history was a requirement, so I must have had, I forget how many students I had in there. But when I eventually went back to teaching at Servite, I taught 5 classes, and each of those classes had around 24 students in them.
How was it teaching a class of 24 and then going and having 7 children? How was that raising 7 children?
Well, actually, when I went back to teaching at Servite, Kieran had just graduated from 8th grade. So we had 3, well, I went back to work when we had 3 children in Catholic school, because each of them, tuition, books, etc. And Kieran was going into kindergarten, so I said to my husband, there's no reason that I can't go back to work and help out. So I got a job actually at our church as director of religious education and worked that job for 7 years. And that was while Kieran was going through school there. So when he graduated from 8th grade, he went to Mater Dei for a year, and I taught at Servite, and then he decided his buddies had gone to Servite, so he would come there. So he was there at the same time that I was teaching, and I taught there 7 years.
7 years, wow.
But being that it's an all-boys school, I would let them know that I had raised 4 sons, and there isn't too much that they would do or think of that I hadn't been exposed to. So, and I think that was a big help to have had the experience of raising 4 boys and then teaching in an all-boys school.
There you go. Now, meanwhile, during this time, your husband was practicing. How was that with his schedule and your busy schedule and raising children? How was that?
Well, I knew going into the marriage that he was doing obstetrics at the time, so that meant that he could be called out any hour of the night to deliver a baby. He was on call at the hospital, and when you start building up a practice, he worked, of course, 5 days a week in the office. Well, 4 days a week. Wednesday was his golf day. But he worked at the office on Tuesday nights and Friday nights. Saturdays he would do his rounds at the hospital, visiting patients. And so I knew that going into it. So there
I
were
see.
times that, we canceled engagements, or I took the children to church by myself, or whatever. But that was, a trade-off. I loved him, and so I did that.
Hmm. And how long did he practice? Was he in that field? for?
He practiced for 50 years before he retired,
Wow.
and he loved it. There were times that if he would think about what he might have done differently other than being a general practitioner, he thought that maybe he would have liked to have done dermatology.
Hmm.
But and then he gave up obstetrics when he became chairman of the emergency room at West Anaheim Hospital, and he did that for 10 years.
Oh, awesome.